often we see, the current market conditions when we're sitting in meetings and so forth and industry types of events, but Mike has truly brought a vision that he has to life this afternoon. And we want to welcome you to this event as a way of bringing transparency to the real estate industry. And as the industry evolves and we begin to compete with powerful real estate giants, right? And websites and technologies, the human connection has to stay present in the transaction. I hope that you have an aha moment today. I hope that you're able to take a little nugget and that enhances your business relationships, your business overall, and your personal well-being too. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Brandon. So he enlisted in the National Guard in 2002 in the fall, and while attending the Oregon State University, he also competed as a Division I wrestler. And in 2003, his unit deployed in Iraq in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom II and was selected to be the 1st Cavalry Division Air Assault Emergency Response Team during the employment. So in other words, he saw a heck of a lot of combat. So following his first combat tour, Brandon attended University of Oregon, earned his master's in entrepreneurial business. Brandon and his wife Andrea have settled in Dallas, but originally they're from Whidbey Island. He has since been working in the lending industry now for 4 years, and during this time he launched multiple startups to include a property management company, an oil and gas E&P company, and more recently a multi-family syndication firm and a consulting group. So he brings an intense perspective. You can imagine that from combat, right? An intense perspective on leadership and how to win the day. So Brandon and his associate Chris Bailey. Chris, where are you? Just raise a hand over there. Yes. A former Army Ranger and Delta Force operator with 21 years of service, run a high-level leadership coaching and consulting group that specializes in taking action and achieving results. So in light of Memorial Day just passing us, please give a warm welcome for Brandon. Thank him for his service.
The last time I spoke in front of this many people, they were soldiers, and they had to listen to me because I was in charge. So if you guys please do me the favor of laughing and smiling, that would be awesome. So good evening. Thank you guys for coming. As Julie mentioned, a lot of you braved the weather. That was awesome. Now, she gave you my resume, and it sounded really cool, but I have to be honest, I'm just a normal guy. And I had the fortunate opportunity to serve with really special and really incredible team, really incredible individuals, and Chris is one of them. And at the end of the day, the reason why I'm standing up here is because I lived through this experience I'm going to share with you tonight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a short story from my time in combat, and I'm going to move into a framework that we look at and we analyze our decisions on a day-to-day basis. And lastly, I'm going to share with you 3 lessons that we learned in combat that I believe really deeply, and you're going to feel it. It's going to be very intense, not like Rocky, but a little intense, that you can apply them every day and in everything that you do. So I'm going to start by sharing a short story, and it's just a sliver of time. But for us, it's really significant how impactful just that little sliver can be. So it's 2004, late summer, and I was standing on top of a roof on the outskirts of a city, staring through a pair of binoculars. And off in the distance, through the smoke from the cooking fires and the dust that would be blown up from the breeze, you can make out really much taller and larger buildings. That was the heart of the city. The sun was setting, and in Iraq, it's bright yellow, and it kind of reflects off the tops of all the buildings. It's really beautiful. It's very peaceful, actually. I was at peace. It was wonderful. But off in the distance, you can make out this really bright yellow as the sun reflected off this golden dome, this bright yellow dome. And this is what it is right here. It was the golden shrine of Ali, the son of Muhammad, and his resting place. Now, before I go any further, I want you to understand a little context here, who I was at the time. Who was that young man on the roof staring through those binoculars? So I was a boneheaded 21-year-old, right, infantryman who, by sheer luck, I found myself in one of the greatest National Guard platoons in modern history. Now, I was very naive, as most 20-year-olds are, but I knew inherently that in order to be a leader in life, I didn't have those skills, but I wanted to have them. And I knew that the infantry, the U.S. infantry, would give them to me. I also had a deep sense of service, and I knew that that would give me an avenue for that as well. So I was fortunate enough that I had a squad leader who was an Army Ranger. My platoon sergeant was an Army Ranger, and our whole company was stacked with prior service Rangers and others with Special Forces combat experience. What makes that even, I think, more incredible is the diversity of our unit. We were a part-time National Guard unit. So to put that in perspective, we had realtors, cops, loggers, teachers, writers, bus drivers. We were part-time. We were civilians. 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year. We even had a corporal in our unit, Corporal King, who fought on Hamburger Hill in Vietnam. Didn't want to get out. He loved serving that much. And out of the entire division that we deployed with of 20,000 full-time combat soldiers, we were selected, 40 of us were selected, to represent them, tip of the spear, front of the unit when it came time to meet the enemy face-to-face. So I kind of hope that gives a little levity, a little weight to what I'm going to share with you in the story. So I'm going to fast forward now. We have now moved from the outskirts of the city, and we're moving through the streets. And the streets are ravaged, right? There's dust. And what you can see in this picture is it's hot. We're sweating through our uniforms. You see that white stuff on there? That's the sweat. That's the salt from the sweat. So we haven't changed in about 2.5 weeks because we've literally been fighting block to block through the city on our way to the Golden Shrine. What's also pretty evident here is that we're in the middle of combat. And what you don't see in this photo is what's right around that corner. So right around that corner are about a dozen armed insurgents with small arms, like small machine guns, and RPGs or rocket-propelled grenades. And when we turned that corner, we were immediately engaged. So who's been engaged in here? Anyone married? So you know the feeling, right? Okay, so it's kind of like that, but it's a little different because they're shooting at you with real things that could kill you. Not that engagements can't, but this was a little different, right? Well, the first thing you do when you're engaged is you return fire, and then you take cover. So the very first thing we do is 18 of us, we return fire, we take a sharp turn, and we kick down a door. And when you enter a door, you enter at the high ready, and everyone comes in at once. It's very fast, it's very rapid. You may have seen it in the movies. It happens very fluid. We enter the room, and in a matter of seconds, we clear the room. Now, really quick before I go on, if you guys are disturbed by images, you may want to turn your head, because this next image I'm going to show you is something that I haven't been able to let go for years. You'll never guess what popped in behind us. So this is Ryan Tuttle, okay? And he's in a wedding dress in the middle of combat. And you're probably wondering, what does this have to do with combat leadership, or why is he showing me this photo? What does this have to do with real estate or success or anything like that? Well, this is just a moment in time, and it represents one of many factors that made us so successful in combat. Ryan knew that he needed to bring us something in that moment, and he definitely brought it. You can see here. Right? I can't forget about that. So let's kind of dive back into combat here. So about a week after this was taken, I found myself in a 5-story building on the 5th story, overlooking the main roadway that was leading to that golden mosque. When we first entered that building, we immediately set up our 2 machine guns. That's one of them. So we set up both machine guns. I was in the southwest room. That room was fully exposed to sniper fire, and within 50 meters of the building, there were dozens of insurgents engaging us with small arms, RPGs, and now mortars. So it was very hot and heavy. In fact, just moments before we entered that building, there were a couple Marines that were killed by Iranian snipers. So there were 18 of us. We entered the building, and we replaced the 150-man company that had previously held that position. You can imagine right now what we were going through. And I remember this photo like it was yesterday. And right before this photo was taken, I was kind of laying back here on the dusty floor. Chris was right over there in the corner. And I remember crawling up to that weapon. And that's a 7.62 weapon. There's about 10,000 rounds at that time attached to the gun. And I crawled up to that weapon. My face is kind of on that buttstock. And I looked over at Chris, and he kind of nodded at me. You got this. Train your whole life for this. You're fine. And he pulled out his radio, and he keyed his mic. When he keyed his mic, he's talking to a lot of different people at this time. And he gave the command, fire when ready. So over the next 11 and a half hours, we used all those 10,000 rounds and a lot more, and we pushed those insurgents back about 1,000 meters until their backs were against the Golden Shrine. Now I'm going to spare you guys kind of all the unnecessary details of the horrors of war. The violence of action that is required to get through moments like that is really intense. And many of my brothers, including myself, still, we don't think about it today. But what's important here is that in the midst of the bullets flying and the bombs dropping, there are guys wearing wedding dress, right? We were so confident and competent in that moment that we were able to deliver results that were phenomenal for a part-time National Guard unit. So I'm going to end the story here. We're going to go into the framework. So this is something that Chris and I came up with, because one of the greatest ironies in life is that some of these epiphanies happen, but they happen so long after the fact. And I struggled with the question for years of what made us so successful. Why were we able to accomplish as a part-time unit what full-time units could not accomplish? What was it? What was so special? So Chris and I were chatting about 6 months ago, and we had this epiphany. So this framework is really important. So we believe that at any given moment, you all of us, are living in these conditions or zones, whether it be seasonal, monthly, daily, minute, it could be instantaneous. So I'm going to go into them. The first zone is something that we're all experiencing. We're actually all in this zone right now. It's the peace zone. We're having fun. We're having drinks. This is wonderful. We're celebrating things. We're going to celebrate 2 amazing realtors this evening. It's going to be awesome. This is where we experience the American dream. This is where we live freedom. This is also where we're at the greatest risk of complacency. The second zone is something in real estate we're also very familiar with. It's conflict, right? The conflict zone, what signifies that is you're pushed or pulled out of peace, and it's usually a singular conflict that is independent. It's independent of other conflicts. And then last but not least, you have the combat zone. This zone is a series of repeated events that are interconnected. So what's important about this zone is this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where you live or you die, where you earn your money, where you earn your freedom. This is the most important zone. So with all that said, our successes as leaders in the combat zone were not won in combat, okay? They were won, and they were determined by and how we employed discipline every day, leveraged our time, and planned conflict. Because when we knew we were going to be dropped into the inevitable war zone, we knew we needed to have those skills ready. So I'm going to give you some examples, okay, on how we can move through that, just to give a better picture here. Following the military analogy, garrison is at home at the base. We're very peaceful. Conflict is what you see on the movies, right? Soldiers waking up at 2 a.m., getting yelled at, getting screamed at, doing 1,000,000 push-ups, not eating, shooting guns. They're getting inoculated to stress while learning technical and tactical skills so they can fight in combat. This one is something also we're familiar with. Hopefully, it doesn't stop at college. They actually go get jobs, right? But this is something we understand, and I don't care what anyone says. Any teenager say home is peaceful. It's a peace zone, okay? But that's the goal we want, right? They go to college, they learn some more skills, they have some conflicts that are independent. This one is a deeply personal one. There are many of us in this room, myself included, that we start our day with the foundation of faith. It's peaceful, right? But we all know, right? Have you heard the saying, there are 2 things you don't talk about at dinner, religion and politics, right? But it's actually a requirement of the faith to share it. And of course, that leads to conflict. But you do that so you build a team, you build some religious muscle so you can go to combat. This one in our industry, right, we're all very familiar with this. I say houses and happy hours. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to show houses, it's a lot of fun to have drinks. But where you really, really get into it is when you start executing contracts, or you go to training, or you do community service. And of course, we all know when a transaction gets combative, right? Foundation. So I'm going to dive into training here. Lesson 1, complacency kills. Who in here knows what complacency means? It's a really important concept because what it means at its core is that you're doing nothing, right? You're just sitting there. So what this meant for us is that we respected each other in our team so much, we respected the enemy so much, that we trained so hard, we were so disciplined about taking ourselves out of peace and into conflict, planned conflict, through physical training, spiritual training, emotional training, weapons, leadership, that when we went to combat, we never had a challenge we were not confident we could overcome. So I'm a numbers guy, and I want to put some numbers on the board here. I won't get too technical. But what this graph represents on the bottom line right here is that as 20 years pass, if you do nothing else in your life, you will have lived 20 years. Make no changes, you live 20 years. Now, if you set your alarm 1 hour earlier a day, you'll gain an additional 3 years of life or productivity, whatever you want to call it. If you go so far that you want to turn your TV off, I know that's crazy, or put your screen away, and you grab 2 extra hours a day, you get an additional 7 years. Now, if you ever wonder how do these people like Elon Musk or Tom Brady or LeBron James accomplish these things at such a young age that no one else seems to be able to accomplish, is because they get after it. And let's assume that they get 4 more hours a day. Over the course of 20 years, that's 14 additional years. Where all of us are living 20, they're living 34. So Albert Einstein said that the 8th wonder of the world is compound interest. He who understands it earns it, he who doesn't pays it. So if you put a little Albert Einstein in here, what you get is an exponential curve. And if you ever met someone and you said, man, you're so good at this, how long have you been doing this? They're like 2 years. And you're like, man, that's incredible. It's because this is what they're doing. If you put a dollars amount to it, because we all understand money, it's a factor of 3. You can be 3 times wealthier, 3 times happier, 3 times more successful. You have 3 times better health. So when I say complacency kills, in combat it will kill you physically. If you're complacent in the civilian world, it'll kill your relationship. If you're complacent in your marriage, you'll get a divorce. If you're complacent with your kids, you won't have a relationship. If you're complacent with your health, you'll know what happens, goes on. So I'm a huge fan of go do. So when you leave here tonight, just write down one thing you want to accomplish this year. For some of us, it may be close a deal. For others, it may be skydive. Write it down. But you're not going to make any changes until you actually log into your phone, set your alarm 30 minutes earlier. Lesson number 2, break down your weapon every day. The M240 Bravo right there is a belt-fed, air-cooled, gas-operated, fully automatic machine gun. It fires approximately 950 rounds per minute. It weighs 27.1 pounds. It has a range of 3,725 meters. For all you Cowboy fans, that's how many football fields, John? 34 football fields. Imagine 34 Cowboys fields lined up. That's how far it shoots out. But what's interesting about it is that while it's a huge weapon, the most important part of the weapon is the smallest piece. The dependability of this weapon depends 100% on the condition of the sear. Why is this important? 95% of this weapon can be field stripped and broken down in a matter of minutes, but the condition of the sear and the gas regulator demand hours and hours of attention. Why is it important? That one thing that you want to accomplish, what I encourage you to do is, when I say break down your weapon every day, I mean break that down to the smallest parts possible, perfect each detail. So I understand the conditions of success in my job, and I'll give you an example. My alarm goes off at 4 o'clock every morning, and I do something that's absolutely crazy. I don't hit snooze, I just get up. The first thing that goes in my head is, this is going to be an awesome day. And I don't care what you believe, when you hit snooze, you've lost the day. You already lose. You're going to snooze your work, you're going to snooze your fitness, you're going to snooze. It just is, it bleeds through everything that you do. So I'd encourage you here, just get up. Just get up. I walk into the bathroom, I take my toothbrush, I do toothpaste first before the water, okay? And then I brush my teeth, and I do a bunch of other stuff I'm not going to share with you, but I make it to the gym at 4:30. Now, a lot of people talk about working out in the morning. I'm going to tell you why I work out for an hour and a half every morning. It's because the hardest part of my day I want to accomplish first. I want to have so much momentum in winning that when I walk through my office door at 8:30, I have more oxygen in my brain, I'm awake, I'm alive, I've already won. The hardest part's done. The rest is easy. So when I walk through the door, I go straight, I take a left, I take a right, I go 3 doors down, I take a left, I hit play on the coffee maker, I open the cabinet, I take out my American flag mug, I set it down, I turn it 90 degrees so it's perpendicular to the coffee maker, and I step back and I look at the American flag and I'm like, dang, you look good. Because I love the American flag. And then I turn around, I take a left, I take a right, I take a right, I go right to my stand-up desk, I turn on both monitors, Control, Alt, Delete, log in, and I go into my junk mail and I go into my spam. I clean those out. And I'm sharing this with you because I cannot afford, I understand the conditions for success in my job, and I cannot afford to miss an email from you, or for anyone on my team. I understand that while so small, that miss of information can reverberate through the whole transaction in such a way that we'll lose. The team will lose. So after I do that, I turn around, I take a left, I take a left, I take a right, I go back into the kitchen, I fill up my coffee mug, I go back to my desk, I log into the Facebook, and I do the Facebook thing for 5 minutes. When my coffee's done, I turn it off. I'm done with it. And I promise you, I'm sure you can understand by now, throughout my day, it's just like this until 4:30. And I know a lot of things pop up in real estate that is totally unexpected. So I plan for chaos between 1 and 4:30 because I know the ball's going to be dropped somewhere, somehow, maybe the weather, maybe stuff totally out of our control. But I'm ready to pick the ball up, run downfield, and score. No matter what, I start the day winning. The momentum is so intense that it won't stop. And that's just part of it. So this is what I would encourage you to do here. Understand where your conditions are, break them down, perfect them. Now this last lesson is my favorite one. Okay? Are you guys ready for this? It's the easiest one to understand, the hardest one to implement. So this is the Ryan Tuttle lesson, right? Would you all agree that life is too short? It's precious. We've all lost loved ones, right? Everyone, we could go through this long list tonight. But one of the greatest lessons that I learned in combat was right here. It was to love life and find joy. So now when I find myself being lazy, sitting there complacent, maybe disengaging, maybe taking myself too serious, a lot of us in our industry do. I'm guilty of it just like everyone else. I try so hard to step back, and I ask myself, what would my fallen brothers think? What about my father who passed away when I was 5? And why is that so powerful? And this is the hardest part, is you have to shift your paradigm here. Because when you pull out your phone and you scroll, or you turn on the TV to watch a Cowboys game, it may seem innocent, but that's complacency in action, and it's actually separating you from life. Because what would my father given to spend one more minute with me in the corner coloring, right? Think about that. What about my fallen brothers? What would they have given to come home and hug their wife one more time? Or see their son or daughter who they'd never seen before? So this is why this one is the hardest one to implement, because it pushes us and it forces us to shift our paradigm here. And it forces you to re-engage everyone around you and get the distractions out of there because they're not adding value to your life or anyone else's life. And I think when you hear Paulette and Shana talk about this stuff tonight, talk about their success, I think you're going to find a common thread that they understand that complacency kills, they understand their business, they've broken it down, they've perfected each detail, and they have fun. And they don't take themselves too seriously, and they're humble. And so I would encourage you to go do this. Now, last but not least, I'm going to get really personal here. So when I returned from combat, I really struggled to reacclimate to the norms of civilian life. Y'all are really hard to get along with sometimes, right? Because you know soldiers are easy. But check it out. It wasn't until I convinced this woman to marry me that I actually kind of figured it out. And so I'm really thankful here. And this is a peace zone, right? This is a wonderful, fun time. But like all relationships, we have a little combat, okay? A little conflict. She's a warrior at heart. And what's cool about it is even in combat, and see how I'm clearing rims right there, right? I'm carrying her, but she's carrying me in different ways. And it's so important because as a team, we work together. We understand our strengths and weaknesses, we work together. I'm sharing with this to you because this is the joy that when we fight together, right? So this is peace, conflict, this is combat. We fight side by side today. So with that, I want to say thank you guys. Hey, I really appreciate you guys' time. I'm super humbled to have been given this opportunity. You're going to hear from 2 wonderful, wonderful professionals tonight, so stick around. Thank you. You're done?